Chapter 36 Cultural Stability. Deuteronomy chapter 11, verses 18 to 25. Therefore shall ye lay up these my words in your hearts and in your soul, and bind them for a sign upon your hand, that they may be as frontlets between your eyes. And ye shall teach them your children, speaking of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. And thou shalt write them upon the doorposts of thine house, and upon thy gates, that your days may be multiplied, and the days of your children in the land which the Lord sware unto your fathers to give them, as the days of heaven upon the earth. For if ye shall diligently keep all these commandments which I command you, to do them, to love the Lord your God, to walk in all his ways, and to cleave unto him, then will the Lord drive out all these nations from before you, and ye shall possess greater nations and mightier than yourselves. Every place whereon the soles of your feet shall tread shall be yours, from the wilderness in Lebanon, from the river Euphrates, even unto the uttermost sea shall your coast be. There shall no man be able to stand before you, for the Lord your God shall lay the fear of you and the dread of you upon all the land that ye shall tread upon, as he hath said unto you. Deuteronomy chapter 11, verses 18 to 25. Moses here begins with words which repeat Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 6 to 9. He commands them to lay up these words. The Hebrew for lay is a word with many facets of meaning, but one is clearly this. They are to preserve and treasure these words as a promise of wealth and victory. To assume that these are merely words of counsel is to fail to understand that God promises covenant blessings for covenant faithfulness. Momentous consequences rest on their obedience. As P.C. Craigie stated, God here makes three requirements of the covenant people, and all three are radically interrelated and are not to be separated. They are law, obedience, and love. These verses are a summary of what Moses has taught thus far in his final instructions to Israel. The issues are stated plainly. Israel now has no excuse for disobedience and failure. The consequence of past sins have been cited, and the promises for obedience. Louis Goldberg observed of these verses, chapter 11, verses 18 to 25. Some people wonder why there is a continuous restatement of the commands, but we are reminded that repetition is the mother of learning. What Moses wants most earnestly is loyalty to the covenant. This seems simple enough and certainly is an elementary requirement, but man's fallen estate makes him radically at war against all loyalties to anything other than his own will. Fallen man wants the world to revolve around himself and his purpose, and this puts him in opposition to God. He wants God to serve him, not he God. In return for loyalty to the covenant, God promises Israel, verse 24, some remarkable boundaries. In the northeast, the river Euphrates would provide a natural boundary in what is now Syria. The Mediterranean world would be their western boundary. The mountains of Lebanon would be north of them. East and south of them would be a barren area for another natural defense. Only under David and Solomon was there any approach to these boundaries. Later, King Josiah sought to return Judah to the covenant law. At the same time, he came close to attaining these boundaries. There is a remarkable statement in verse 21 which has attracted major interest over the centuries. Of the promise of the land, Moses says that God swore unto your fathers to give them the land. The seed are not mentioned here, only the patriarchs. Even among the rabbis, this phrase was seen as a promise of life after death, in that the gift of the land would be to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, 3 patriarchs alive and with God. We are not to speculate on what all this involves, but neither can we ignore the fact that God gives gifts to his people not only during their life here, but when they are in heaven. In verse 18, there is a reference to the identifying marks of Hebrews in their clothing. To us, this seems strange, but until recently, this was routine in most of the world. Various peoples identified themselves by a number of ways, religiously and nationally. Thus, when medieval Jews were required to wear the Star of David and like identifying marks, this was not a case of singling out Jews. Sumptuary laws required people to dress in terms of their class to identify themselves. Peasants could not carry a sword, only a staff, which in itself was an excellent weapon. Every order of monks wore identifying marks. An unidentifiable man was distrusted. Identifying marks earlier in this century, in a minor way, were such things as the wearing of crosses. Hostility to such things is now increasing. I do remember that in a farming community in which I grew up, many foreign-born farmers wore a new pair of overalls to church. To them, a business suit was inappropriate, even though they could afford it. With the Depression of 1929 on, necessity led some to return to the older practice. What verse 18 represents is alien to our time because the goal now is a blurring of all distinctions, not a happy acceptance of them. In such a culture, our distinctive marks must be intellectual and religious. We are to be identified by a living faith more than by covenantal forms. Moses then insists in verse 19 on an education of children in terms of the covenant. A general, neutral education does not exist. Education is inescapably religious because it transmits the tools and values of a culture from the old to the young. Education is essentially a familistic and religious concern, and thus must be a constant concern to godly parents. Diligence in obedience is stressed strongly in verse 22. Life is not an endless holiday, but a testing, a calling to serve God, and a responsibility. The joy of life comes in meeting our godly duties, not in evading them. Diligence in obeying God's law carries great promises, sure promises, verses 22 to 25. The promise is explicit. There shall no man be able to stand before you. God will fill their enemies with fear and dread. Second, wherever they tread shall be their possession. This means that the only impediment to the conquests of the designated areas will be their own sin and unwillingness. Third, their victories will be God's doing. It is the Lord who will drive out all these nations from before you. Verse 23. They cannot credit themselves with the power, but only God. Men must not forget, in any age, the mystery of grace, namely that it comes to men and nations not because they deserve it, but in spite of themselves. We are often unlikely candidates for grace and strange witnesses to God's power, humanly speaking. St. Paul makes it very clear how God confounds the world's elitism to use men and things the world despises. God's contempt for men's humanistic evaluations is very notable. In Paul's words, "For ye see your calling, brethren, how that not many wise men after the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble are called, but God hath chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise, and God hath chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things which are mighty, and base things of the world, and things which are despised hath God chosen, yea, and things which are not, to bring to naught things that are, that no flesh should glory in his presence. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 26 to 29. This text is often misread. Paul does not say that no wise men or powerful, wealthy, and noble are called, because he himself was all these things before his conversion. What Paul does say is that God is not governed by man's assessments or probabilities. He chooses whom he will, brings at times hatred and contempt upon them as his training for service. Our democratic age has at times been ready to misuse Paul's words also, holding that to be foolish, weak, and despised makes one a member of the elect circle. Paul stresses, rather, the sovereign choice of God as the sole source of election, and the purpose is that no flesh should glory in his presence. Verse 29. Men can take no legitimate credit for what God has done. God has regularly put down peoples who have seen themselves as the chosen and hence the superior people. He withdraws his grace and withholds his mercy to the self-elected. But self-election has been a besetting sin of both Israel and the Church, and its judgment is a sure one. Arminianism is a theological form of self-election, and very evil. The life of diligent obedience is described as a good and a long one, verse 21. An unusual expression is used. The days of the faithful shall be multiplied, as the days of heaven upon the earth, verse 21. This is the reading not only of the Authorized Version, but also of the older Jewish version from the Masoretic text. Many new translations now read, like the 1962 Torah version, as long as there is a heaven over the earth. In any case, the meaning is that when we are diligent in obedience, God's promise is as sure as can be. It has the stability of the heavens and the whole of God's order. The foundation of cultural stability is not in man's humanistic efforts and pretensions, but in man's diligent obedience to God.